Hello, this is a broken tumble dryer, and to be more specific, it's my parents' broken tumble dryer. They've had it 8 years. Why am I here? What am I doing? And yes, I'm going to attempt to fix it. And you know for sure that if this video doesn't go out, I won't have managed to fix it. It kind of reminds me of the decision on why I chose to become an electrician. Let me explain. So, I'm always keen on fixing things and learning. I've fixed loads of different things and appliances over the years. So for me, this represents an opportunity to learn. Why? Because it's a heat pump dryer. It's the newer technology and it has a refrigerant system built into it, which enables it to dry clothes efficiently. So I've never messed with a heat pump dryer before, but I do know that heat pump dryers have one Achilles heel. They clog up their heat exchangers. So my dad's had a little play with this and he's tried to work it out, but getting into those heat exchangers was a little bit of hassle for him. This job does take quite a bit of time to strip it apart, so for most people it might not be worth it, but as I mentioned, this is therapeutic. It's nice to take something apart and then have the satisfaction of fixing it. So let's get in, let's tear it apart and see whether those heat exchangers are clogged up. I want to see if my hunch is right. We'll find out. So in order for me to do what I need to do here, I've got to get this drum out to access those heat exchangers below. It might be that this machine is just beyond repair, but as I said, there's huge satisfaction in having a go at fixing things and in the process trying not to break things. I have to take the earths off and get this power cord out the way, because to get the drum out, the back has to come off. So the brown live wire goes furthest to the right. That will be handy for future me. One power cord out of the way. So the back of this machine is coming off. I don't know how much of this is already undone from my dad taking it apart the other day, but I am regretting not using the drill here. Let's get this centre core out first. They're pretty fine, those screws. I'm gonna turn that up to the fastest setting. Hee. So this machine is rated at 700 watts. Bearing in mind a tumble dryer from 10-15 years ago might have been rated at 2000 watts. So you can see through this heat pump technology there's such an efficiency saving, which despite them costing a bit more up front will save a lot of money in the long term. Wonder how many screws we'll have left at the end. Quite a few already. One part out the way. So I've taken that back plate off. I've got to take this cap off the back as well, which this will release the bearing on the drum. Four screws look pretty similar. There's a little circlip that lives on here. I need a straight screwdriver to get that out. So behind the circlip is a little rubber washer. One of the biggest challenges with taking things apart is remembering where everything goes afterwards, so videoing it is really useful. Generally with this sort of stuff it doesn't matter too much with the screws. You've got a fine and you've got a coarse thread, but they're the similar length. I want them to go back in the same place though. This pipe has to come off, which can just stay down there, leaving me the last few screws. So there we are. So there was a little tab that held the panel with the control board onto the side panel there that was just holding on. I'm going to get this out of the way. I understand there's 3 tubes. I've taken one of them off already. It's pretty cold this morning, so this tube isn't very flexible. This is free. So we're getting pretty close to this drum coming out. In fact, this might even be the time for the drum. Before the drum comes out, I need to turn it and release this motor from the spring. So, little screwdriver in here. So now this drum is getting pretty loose, and it just sits on a couple of wheels at the front. So if I drag it back around, there we are, one drum out. So I'm learning as we go too. There is a cycle here of air that goes through the front here, down through these heat exchangers. One of them allows the water to condense too. The other one then circulates it back and warms the air back up. It then goes through this fan and on that cowling that was on the back into the drum. This process is really low temperatures. It's more like having a dehumidifier in your house, but in a much smaller condensed circuit. So I need to get this cover off. There's a bunch of screws around it. First off, I've got to take this out of the way, then a bunch of clips, and we can see whether the heat exchangers are clogged up. Let's go. So these are the same size as everything on the back. So I believe it's just one that is down here, which is a bit more tricky to get to. So do I remove this entire front panel to access it? Feels like a bit of a pain. We'll see. That's not the best fit, but it will be okay. This wheel's got to come out, because there's actually 2 behind here. There's one there and one just behind this wheel. So yeah, 2 tricky ones to get out. I might end up having to strip part of this door apart to get to it, but we shall see. So on the front, it looks like this drum just rides on these 2 wheels, and this seal around here, which I presume that's all, yeah, that's all lint that's trapped up in there. That's the problem with tumble dryers, they just build up lint over time. whether it be a bad design or whether it just be almost an impossible task, but all machines are built to a budget. How accessible do you make these heat exchangers for cleaning? How serviceable do you make them? It's possible, isn't it, that we could have a panel that you flip the machine upside down, remove that panel and maybe air compress them out, but I don't know. I'm not sure if I've got all the right tools for these, although this does seem to be working. I'm quite surprised that there's a great big, something like 150mm PC style fan in the front of this machine. Just discovered that this screwdriver, which has got to be like 30-40 years old, my dad's screwdriver by the way, is ratcheting. Okay, so this should now lift out a whole load more lint here. I understand that there's a rubber seal under here that I've got to make sure is back in at some point, and as I don't want to break anything, because anything you break on this just makes it pointless to be fixing, to be working on, because are you going to spend the money on the parts? Anyway, what is going on with this? There we go. So that little slot was stuck down that side, whole load of lint in here, but I'm more concerned with how the bins are in there, but we will have a look in a second. Okay, I think it is time for all of these clips to be removed. I don't entirely know how all these clips work, and I don't want to break them, but we shall get there. So I'm thinking a little bit of upwards pressure while also getting a tool in here and levering it. There we go, that one's popped. One down, how many to go? Okay, so that is the design. You use that slot there. What about these ones? Okay. Not too bad. Let's move this screwdriver a bit. Well, there we go. First one that snapped. Let's hope that that seal works afterwards. So, I'm going to presume, yep, that is just the sump. Moment of truth. Again, I'm expecting a rubber seal here. So, looking at this, it isn't bad. It's not bad. You would expect worse. But, having said that, these fins are so delicate as well. There is a good chunk of material covering the front of this, and it does not take much to stop the airflow in something like this. Let me show you closer. So as I just said, it doesn't take much to clog these up, but there's a thin layer of material there. Ideally, if this was at my house, I would just blast the air compressor against it, but I think that could be enough to stop it from functioning as it should. I'm really keen to get it cleaned out and see whether that fixes it. But as I say, it's quite a hunch, and it's a lot of work stripping something like this down just for that. Let's find out. It's this part of the project that I cannot be bothered with in the slightest, cleaning it up. I've seen people use sort of soapy water. I'm going to start with a vacuum and see whether I can get rid of some of the dust that way, and we'll go from there. These fins are so incredibly delicate. I've just bashed a couple over there. It's getting a bit harder as I get further down this end. It's difficult to put across how thin and weak these little fins. Yeah, they don't need to be thick. They're in a protected environment, just apart from when somebody like me comes along. I'm going to have a go with the hose. If you're wondering why it's soaking wet, I decided it would be a good idea to wash the exchangers with water, and I wanted to get rid of that water, and I don't have my wet and dry vacuum with me, so I'm just carefully, like incredibly carefully, placing these heat exchangers back, and they are looking pretty amazing now, nice and clean. So I've just got to put that top cover back on and make sure that everything that has a seal has its seal in the correct place. That is my next move. There is nothing like mixing water and electrics, hey? I have tipped it away from the motor and the compressor, and believe it or not, away from this pump as well, but I presume that pump should be okay. So I am now trying to seat this back in its same position. I think that goes possibly under there. So that gets held in at the front. Everything wants to sit down nicely now. So we're all clipped in, I believe. So I don't know if you remember what I did last was put this front piece back on here. So this piece, I've got both of these clips to put in, and I've got to be very careful that I don't damage in any way the heat exchangers inside. I discovered afterwards that the part I have in my hand is part of the self-cleaning mechanism. This is why I like taking things apart. You learn new things as you go along. So the holding tank for the water at the top, at certain points, either through the cycle or when it chooses to clean, it allows water to run down here, which will then flood across the heat exchanger and then end up in the sump tank. When it's pumped back up to that top reservoir, there's a mesh there to stop any of that lint. I imagine the front heat exchanger, the cold one, will get the most lint. There's always going to be lint that bypasses the filter, but the back one, I can't imagine that really getting rinsed and washed by that system. And maybe that's why this heat exchanger is blocked up over time. Somebody, and definitely not me, may have had their drill in the wrong setting and tightened this one up too much. That's going all the way down to the bottom because I don't want to break any more like that. It is just a case of reassembling now. Some of this I didn't take apart and I'm not entirely sure, so it will be left for my dad to put back together in a little bit. These two at the back are going to be fun because they are quite tucked in. There's a great big lesson in having the right tools. So this is very, very loosely magnetic. I've already lost one down there, which I have been able to grab with a magnet, but because it's tucked down here, I can't get my fingers in. Because it's not magnetic, I can't hold it in position, so I risk undoing the work of these other four that I put in, just down to not having the right tools with me. So I can hold that in there, but again, this is slightly too wide on this magnet to fit in the gap. This is on. So I think next it's the wheel and then the drum. This drum is ridiculously light, but there's no need for it to be heavy, I guess. So if we slot this back on those wheels at the front, it's just important to have this belt looped over. So it's on this side, and I'll check the other side. Much harder to see, but yeah, we have a drum on. So I believe the back panel, which will then allow that drum to be fastened into position. If I remember right, this slotted in at the top. These two go around the back, and that other pipe goes round the front. So my understanding is the coarse screws are for where this machine goes into plastic. Whereas the fines are for metal, but I could be wrong. So I've got a few more screws down here. Let's take this. Remove. No, I think that one does go there. let's get this routed up. So it starts in here. It's quite a flexible hose, this. Round here, and that will go into our hopper container at the top in a bit. We'll put the back bearing on now. There's a bit of strength, so it's just a form of bushing by the looks of it. Do I stick a dab of grease on there while I'm at it? Why not? Okay, so the bushing bearing on the back, a couple of screws for that. I'm going to put these screws in and then I will worry. So I think 2 went that way, 2 go this way. I'll put these in and then I will worry about lining this drum up. I'll put these 2 in. I'll put these 2 in, then I will secure the drum. And then put the cap on. Then got the last 2 which hold in and slot nicely to these little lugs. We got the back cover, the power lead, and this container for the water. Back cover is now on. Everything on a machine like this is pretty sharp, so ever so slight amount of the outer sheathing coming off there, not enough to worry about, but what it does make you think about is your fingers, because it does not take much for your fingers to be the thing that gets attacked by these sharp edges. Okay. My biggest concern, because it's been left out for a few days, is that things inside this little box are wet, and if things inside this box are wet, when I plug it in, we could have some issues, but we shall see. Let's get the motor reattached to the pulley. Looking down here, if I remember right, this belt goes quite literally like that. I'm following the same mark that it was in before, and then it tensions like that. So my spring is down here.
Now on Granada, tonight's news at 10. Liverpool may have...
Let's give this drum a spin, nice and smooth. So I'm happy that that is all good. We had it back up to there, so I'm happy I've got it to the right point, all the way round. This wire comes back around, and then I just slot all these clips back in to keep this wiring neat. And the power connector. Just tidying up all the hoses, everything is nicely fixed. So that is this machine back as far as I took it apart. I've removed the back panel, I've removed this system for transferring the air into the drum or out of the drum. It would be back into the drum. I've put the tank back on, I've cleaned out those heat exchangers, and they had material that was blocking them, so it is now just for my dad to put the last few bits that he's taken off, because he knows where bits went, what screws went where, and then we can plug this machine in and see if it functions again. If it is as simple as that, then great, something has been fixed just for a bit of cleaning. It does question the maintenance of these machines. Like, it's just not possible for the average person to spend that much time. It's only going to be people like myself that are interested in fixing things, interested in learning how products are put together and how they work. I know there's loads of people out there that are similar to me. What really stands out to me is if you have a machine like this and it's not showing an error light and it just isn't drying clothes as well as it used to, then why not pass it on to somebody in your family that is inclined to fix things, or stick it on Facebook free, leave as much information for the person as to what the issue is, what it's doing, what it's not doing, or just stick it on eBay for £10. Rather than throwing something away, there will be somebody out there that is willing to take it off your hands and learn in the process. So there we are. Next time you see me, hopefully this will be working. So it turns out that what's left on this machine is just body panels, so I should be able to run it as it is, and we shall see. So with those cloths in, let's start it and see if it works. Okay, so we're getting a time. We'll give it a go. We've got a beep. There we go. So I'll come back in a little bit and I will see whether those cloths are in any way dry or whether we're exactly the same as we were before and just wasted a bunch of time. Okay. And they are dry, so it is now working. Yes! Success. And you know for sure that if this video doesn't go out, I won't have managed to fix it.